Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello and welcome from the Burbank studio of ubngo.com. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is Money and You, a show where we talk about your relationship with money and how to improve it so that you can have work and a life that are limit-free. So today it's a solo show, just me here, and I want to share with you some important news that I think is very much tied to your relationship with money, and that's your work. So we're going to focus today on a show around getting back to work, because for whatever you're reading in the news, whatever you're hearing right now is actually the best time to get back to work. If you've been home, if you've been out of work, whatever your pandemic situation has been and where it's left you, if you are not currently working, if you're not currently happy at work, now is a great time to get out there and get yourself a new job. And I'm going to tell you why. Because a lot of people are thinking now is not the right time. There are a lot of people who have come to me with the career coaching that I do and said, oh my gosh, you must be swamped because everyone's out of work. So clearly that's the thinking, that's the perception out there, that everyone is out of work. Businesses have shut down and scaled back, and the economy might be in trouble. And so people are definitely thinking that there are lots of workers out there seeking work and not very many jobs. So that's a really interesting thing, because I recently had a conversation with a recruiter, and she was telling me, oh my gosh, I have so many jobs. What I don't have are good, viable candidates. And so she is finding that her candidate pool is not nearly enough to satisfy the need for the people who are wanting to hire out there. So super interesting to me. It really caught my attention. And so we spoke about this, and I started doing a little research on what's going on. And I have to say that now is a really great time to get out there and find a new job. So people are falling into different categories. Obviously, everyone's got a different situation. So some people might want to go back to what they're doing, or what they were doing, and then some people may want to completely change what they're doing. And so there are a lot of reasons to not go back. And this is what I discovered, was that people are perhaps not going back, a lot of people, for health reasons. They're not quite comfortable yet. They're worried about their own health. They're worried about the health of people in their families. And so despite all the vaccinations and everything, there are a lot of people who are still pretty reticent to go back to work. So they're waiting, and not necessarily, with an understanding of the magic date where it'll be okay. But for right now, they're just not quite ready. So businesses are opening up, and the economy seems to be tracking pretty well in terms of employment. There was a couple of weeks ago where over 916,000 jobs, that does not include farm and agricultural jobs, but those 916 jobs were added in that last month. And that's sort of evidence that the momentum with hiring is happening. There is momentum with hiring. But that statistic doesn't actually tell us a lot about the conversations that are happening in people's homes. And that's where it gets really interesting, because you think, oh, as soon as, there are jobs out there, people are going to want to go back to work. Not necessarily. There seem to be a number of reasons. Childcare continues to be a reason that people are not able or comfortable to go back. A lot of families have had to make, all kinds of unique changes to be home with kids. And one person or another has decided to either stop working or stay home and take care of kids. And for some, that situation, they're not able to change that quite yet, or they are not comfortable changing it. So everyone's at a different comfort level, and that's okay. People have to, obviously feel good about going back to work unless they absolutely need to go back to work, and then they too will find that now is actually a good time. So the delay in going back to work may seem like a good idea for people. Some people are thinking as well that the unemployment benefits they're getting, or that coupled with stimulus checks might be enough, and they can kind of put it off a little bit. But here's the deal. There are many compelling reasons to go back to work, and quickly, assuming that the health of you and your family is such that it makes sense. So we don't want anybody's health being compromised, but obviously, if you're considering going back in a couple of months, you might want to ask yourself, why? What is your rationale? If it's just because you can, because your benefits are paying, enough so that you can live, or if you just kind of are, I don't know, just waiting to see, what else is going to open. That's important for you to look at and just ask yourself those questions. Is it time? Is it time to get back to work? And if you don't feel like it is, why? And if you're kind of like, yeah, I think it is, but oh gosh, it's a big effort and I don't actually need to right this minute, just take a second look at that, because I'm going to go through a few reasons, really compelling reasons, why you might want to think about going back and going back now. So let's talk about mental health. One of the basic human needs is to find purpose and meaning in your life. And so work actually fulfills some of these basic human needs in a really nice way. And the sense of fulfillment and purpose that can be derived from work are really important ways that people create meaning and value in their lives. So you connect with others at work, you use your skills and talents, you create structure in your life. That is huge. And there's a sense of pride and well-being that comes from having a job. And so, think about that. Just think about the state of your mental health right now, and would it really be beneficial to get back into the workplace and have that structure in your life again, and have people around you again, and have something that you're doing on a daily basis that feels productive and meaningful, and create some balance in your life? Because right now, if you are at home and you're doing other things, it may, before, when you were working full-time and working hard, it might have felt like there was no balance because you weren't spending enough time with your family or friends. Now it might be the opposite, where all of your time is with your family, and maybe the balance is shifted in a different way than you're used to because there isn't work. So personally, I think work is a wonderful mental health aid, and so for that reason, I would say think about getting back to work for that reason. Another reason is this is an interesting time. If you can find temp work, this is right now the best opportunity that you might have to go from temp to permanent hire. And so a lot of people get jobs, temporary jobs, in companies or organizations they want to work in, because they aren't hiring for full-time work for permanent employees, but you might be able to get a foot in the door through a temporary position. Right now, there will be people at those companies who will not come back. There will be people at those companies who are making their own changes in their lives. And so this may be an opportune time to get in as a temp worker and to transition into full-time. It also gives you a little chance to see the company in action and see if it's really what you want. And so, and in the past, a lot of people would go into this as a temp employee hoping for full-time work and really not getting it, because a lot of these companies, the good ones that people really love, there's not as much turnover. So it's not easy to go from temp to permanent. But right now is a really great time. Companies are hiring, they're seeking out talent, they're hiring in all capacities, in temporary, part-time, full-time. And if you take this temp work now, especially with companies that you aspire to work with, companies that maybe you've you've wanted to work with but didn't know how to get a foot in the door, this is your chance. And your chance of becoming permanent is better than ever before. So that's another great opportunity that you might not want to pass up right now. It's like this little window in time where not everybody's back at work and not everybody's going to come back at work. So even those companies that are super desirable that people don't typically leave may have openings, and you may be able to get in those companies one way or another. Another very interesting feature that I'm particularly interested in, and the show is Money and You. We're talking about money, and obviously your source of income is the key to your money, and so you want to have a great source of income, whether that's a job or whether you're working on your own or it's investments, whatever it is. That source of income is so important. And right now, I've been told that it is a time when the pay rates may actually be higher than normal, again, because there's a shortage of people who are out there filling these jobs. And so it could be a time when demand is high and the applicant pool is low. And so that means you might be able to negotiate a higher salary than you otherwise would. And when you're negotiating a salary, you want to negotiate as high a salary as you can initially when you get the job, because later you'll have raises, but those raises will never bring in as much income as starting from a lower base salary as it will if you start from a higher base salary. And so you've got time on your side when you start with the higher salary. So there is room to negotiate now, which is kind of counterintuitive. I think people are thinking, oh my gosh, I should just get out there and be happy for a job. So many people aren't working. But the reality is companies need good people right now. And so it could be, again, an opportune time to go in and bump your salary up a little bit more than you thought you could. So in a few months, when more people are comfortable, more people are back, more people realize that the jobs are out there, that may change. And so right now is a great time to be able to get into companies who really may be desperately needing people and ask for more money. So the overall financial gain is really important if you start with a higher salary from the get-go. So that can be significant for your future. The, kind of along with that, some of the most desirable companies, as we said, are hiring now. And those can be companies that are hard to get into. They have great cultures. People love working there. There are plenty of those companies out there that people love working at so much that they just don't leave. And so right now, again, is this little window where you might be able to get into some of the more desirable workplaces that are often harder to get into. And so, again, an opportune time. People are transitioning due to the pandemic. There are people who have decided to just make big life changes at this point. They want to work remotely going forward. There are all kinds of different things. And once these positions fill, you can assume, again, that people will occupy them for a long time. And so good to see if you can get into some of those now. So again, I would set your sights high. I know it's a strange time. It's post-pandemic or almost post-pandemic. And but this could be a really, really excellent time to get into some great companies. The other reason is avoiding gaps on your resume. Typically people have gaps these days. It's not the biggest deal in the world. In the old days, it was a huge deal. You didn't work for a few months. What's going on? It's different now. People change jobs. People get laid off. Lives change. People move. Typically, you'll find people with at least some gaps in their resume. So it's not as big a deal. However, some people have had large gaps this year. And you can explain a lot of that away due to COVID, but there comes a point where it's going to get more difficult to explain while you're still not working. So you might have the resources to stay home, but when you do decide to come back to work, you will have to explain those gaps in your resume. So you want to make sure that you ask yourself at least, and again, just like we said at the beginning, ask yourself, what is your real reason for not returning to work? As soon as possible, really. And what explanation would you provide to a potential employer when you're interviewing and they're asking you about these gaps? Will you be viewed as a more or less desirable candidate because of these gaps? It depends on the answer to that question. So you want to really think that through, and you want to see, why are you doing this, and make sure it is reasonable. And, if you were the employer, what would you think if a person was staying home for the reasons that you're giving? Kind of interesting to put yourself in that other seat. So another reason, let's talk about getting your spouse off the couch. So it's a tough family dynamic sometimes. Sometimes it's great. Family's been together, for a while now, and everybody's getting along, and people are loving it. People I talk to have loved the additional family time. I can tell you that is making it harder for some people to get back to work. But the family dynamic in general, we're creatures of habit, so it's pretty easy to get in the habit of going to work. It's also easy to get in the habit of not going to work and doing other things all day. So you want to really check and see if you have a partner, or a family, how is this either serving your family or actually harming your family? Because some of these relationships may be a little out of whack due to everybody being home. And maybe would the dynamics in your family actually improve if one or more people were to go back to work? Something to think about, something to get kind of honest with yourself about, because obviously you don't want to be kicking somebody out of the house, but sometimes you see that somebody kind of needs to get back to work, and it would be good for them. It would be good for their sense of self, for their own happiness, for their sense of, positivity and confidence and, independence and feeling like they're contributing. So just, check out your family and check out and see if somebody is not going back to work, whether that is actually good for them and for the family. This is also an extremely creative and interesting time to reinvent. I love reinvention. I'm all about reinventing yourself. That's really my business. And so this is one of those, again, rare moments where there might be time that you could stop, running around and doing all the things you do and actually think for a minute about who you might really want to be when you grow up. And maybe now's the time. I've seen many people do this during the pandemic when they couldn't do what they normally did. So they either revised it in some way that maybe they thought they would someday in the future. Maybe someday in the future they would, create something and put it online. And they did it during the pandemic and they're making money from it. Or maybe, I have someone I know who was an executive in entertainment and loved travel, decided that he would start that travel business that he didn't think he would be able to start. And, it was very interesting, the things that people did. A lot of creativity came out of this COVID period. So what do you think about reinventing? Is that something that you've been putting off for someday? Someday after I work another 10 years at this company, I'll do something else. I'll do X. And maybe now is actually the time. And if you are home and you're not working right now, or you're doing some other things, this could be a good time to evaluate even those other things. Could they become permanent? Could that become a new source of income? So I would ask you to really ask yourself, if you want to reinvent at some point, would now be the time? So, reinventing yourself requires that you dream a little bit, that you take some time off. That's why actually when people get laid off, sometimes I'm kind of happy for them, because it gives them, especially if they get a severance package, gives them a few months to connect with themselves, figure out again what their strengths and gifts and talents are and how they might want to use them, what gets them excited and motivated, where their values are. All of these things are part of really what you want to think about going through a career transition. This is what you do with a career coach. You think about all of these things, and then you have a lot more information to get clear and decide on a next direction. So you may have time for that right now. And this is a process we don't do. We don't do it. We're too busy. We're working. We're doing our job, and we're doing our life. And nobody takes time like this to really sit down and analyze who they want to be, what their passion and purpose is. Can't get my grammar right on that one. So anyway, this is potentially for you an opportune time. So I would ask you to think about reinventing and The interesting thing here is that if you want to reinvent and do something different, there might be companies right now who really need people in a way that might allow them to take a chance on you. So another interesting little idea is that you might think, well, nobody's going to hire me because they don't have experience in this thing that I want to do. But that may not be true right now. There may be companies who would be willing to hire you as long as you can explain to them how your skills are transferable to what they do and how you can learn the parts that you don't know how to do. That's always key. Where are your transferable skills and what can you learn that will be necessary for you to take on something totally new? And if you can convince them of that, you may just get your foot in the door in some completely different industry or different area that you've really wanted to try. This might be that window of time. The other thing that I'm hearing from people is, well, I don't really need to work now. I'm making more with my unemployment. I've got my stimulus checks. Here's what I would say to you as a money coach. Those stimulus payments, those are great for starting your savings account, putting into the beginnings of an emergency fund, maybe paying off debt. So if you're just planning to live off of those and just pay some living expenses with them, you're, again, potentially missing a great opportunity to get a little extra money that you could use in some very smart, strategic way instead of just using them to pay rent or whatever. So if you need that, obviously, that's a good use of it. But if you don't, and if you're just sort of thinking you'll kind of lay back and hang out and wait until some of the free money stops coming in, that free money is also money that you could use in some really smart ways and do some smart things with and just get back to work. So just a thought about the stimulus checks, because the emotional boost that you get from getting a new job, starting something new, getting into a new environment, being with new people, having a new purpose, and then also the additional money in the bank, that really will give you a nice little sense of independence and good feeling that you may not have felt in a while. So a little jolt, and it's kind of a twofer where you get the new job and you got a little extra free money in the bank. So that would be my 2 cents on what you might think about with respect to the money that is available to you right now. So you may not hear about the demand for good candidates and good people that companies are looking to hire on the news right now. But if you decide to look for work, the word on the street is that those jobs are there. And so if you're hearing this and you're not really believing, I would just suggest you get out and start talking to some recruiters yourself and checking out what is available, and get back into the game now before the rest of the world figures this out. And so I was really intrigued by the conversation that I had with the recruiter friend of mine, and so I just really wanted to pass that on because, of course, money and your relationship with money is very dependent on you making money. And you being an independent person who is earning money and can take care of yourself and do, again, then all the other things that people want to do with their money. So that's a starting point in relating to money, is making sure that you have a source of income. So with that, I just want to leave you with a tough love money tip. And I think that one today is going to be: update your resume, update your LinkedIn profile, and get out there and see what's available for you in the workforce, because there could be some really amazing opportunities for you right now, and they may be more available now than they might be in a few months. So now might be the time to leap ahead of the pack and see what you can find and start talking to people. The job search takes time anyway. So, there's no reason to believe that you go out there in June or July and you have a job quickly at that point. You might as well get started now and possibly take advantage of these great opportunities that might exist right now, or at least get yourself moving toward an opportunity that might come down the road. So update your bio, update your resume, update your LinkedIn. And part of the reason for doing that is because in your resume and in your LinkedIn, you want to make those aspirational. You want to be showing the world where you want to go, not just where you've been. But you want to put in that professional summary or in that LinkedIn about section some idea of what you're leaning toward, where the next chapter of your life should be, what kind of jobs you're after, what kind of career you're after. And doing those forces you to think about that. It forces you to answer some of the questions we just talked about and try to make some decisions about where you want to go. Because only then really can you write up an effective resume or an effective LinkedIn profile. So that's my money tip for this week, is to get on that, to do those things so that you're at least ready. So that if that recruiter should call or that job should show up, you are ready, you've got the tools in place, and you can go after it right away. So thank you so much for listening. This is Money and You. We're here every Monday at 7 o'clock p.m. at ubngo.com, and then again on all the podcast platforms. You can find me, Michelle Perkins, on Instagram at Live a Limit Free Life, Facebook, Limit Free Life page, YouTube, Limit Free Life channel, and you can, of course, check out my website, limitfreelife.com, and find some free resources and get on my newsletter list, and I'll be informing you that way as well about what's going on in the job world, how to grow a business, and how to take care of your money. So thank you so much for being here. And if you would, please subscribe to the show on the podcast platforms, whichever one you listen to. And that would be wonderful. And if you have questions for me, or if you have, any advice that you feel that you need, please reach out to me. I'd love to answer audience questions. And I'm sure if you have that question, a lot of other people do as well. So you can reach me at Michelle, 2 L's, Michelle, at limitfreelife.com. Email me, ask me your questions, and I'll answer them on the air next time. Okay. Have a wonderful week. See you next time. Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome from the Burbank studio of ubngo.com. I'm Michelle Perkins.